Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a subject that, well, it quietly underpins so much of our modern world. The escalating impact of climate change on maritime ports.
Uh-huh.
You're someone who wants to grasp the core of important issues, swiftly and comprehensively, so let's get straight to it.
Yeah, because when you really look at ports, you realize they're way more than just places goods pass through.
Right.
They are fundamental engines of global trade. They're the bedrock for, well, countless communities' economies, and they're crucial nodes in our energy network. So their resilience, it's paramount.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're aiming to unpack in this deep dive using some really illuminating research we've looked at.
Right.
We're going to explore this kind of two-way street between ports and climate change, how they're not only susceptible to the impacts, but also, interestingly, how they could be key players in finding solutions.
Mm-hmm. A potential that's really quite remarkable.
So we'll be drilling down into the main challenges and, importantly, the cutting-edge answers emerging.
Okay, so to map it out for everyone listening, first, we'll establish this dual role ports as, both vulnerable and contributors to the problem.
Okay.
Then we'll dig into the strategies for making ports climate resilient and, crucially, smart ports, looking at the ecological, tech, and human sides.
A triple transformation idea.
Exactly. After that, we explore the potential for ports as actual drivers of green growth. And we'll wrap up with a specific case, Morocco, to see how this plays out in practice.
Okay, great. Let's unpack this complex relationship then. Ports and climate change, it really is a double bind, isn't it?
It really is.
On one side, these coastal hubs are directly, in the firing line from some really serious physical threats. We're talking rising sea levels, potentially submerging vital infrastructure.
Exactly right. And it's not just that slow creep of the ocean either. Think about the increasing power, the frequency of extreme weather.
Like hurricanes.
Hurricanes, massive storm surges, these can cause just devastating damage to port facilities, the kind of disruptions that ripple right through supply chains for weeks, maybe months.
Yeah, you can imagine.
And we're also seeing faster coastal erosion, which, can literally undermine the foundations of port structures.
So ports are definitely feeling the heat, the direct impact. But the material also points out their role in contributing to the climate problem itself. What does that look like?
Well, what's really significant is the carbon footprint from port activities. It comes from a few key areas.
Okay.
First, there's a heavy reliance on fossil fuels. That powers everything from cranes loading ships to the trucks moving containers and the ships themselves when they're docked.
Right, idling emissions.
Big time.
Yeah.
Then you've got emissions just from the sheer volume of maritime traffic these ports handle. And we shouldn't forget the industrial operations often clustered around ports too.
Okay, so it's a clear two-sided issue. They're at risk, but they're also part of the cause. Which brings us to a core idea in the sources. This need for an integrated approach. What does that mean practically?
The crucial thing is you can't really tackle these problems separately. Adaptation, finding ways to withstand the climate effects we're already seeing.
Like building stronger defenses.
Exactly. That has to go hand in hand with mitigation actively working to cut greenhouse gas emissions, to limit future warming. It's resilience plus a shift to greener operations.
Got it. Resilience and sustainability together.
Yep.
So how do we actually build these climate-resilient smart ports? The sources talk about that triple transformation, ecological, technological, human. Let's start with infrastructure. It's got to be more than just taller walls, right?
Oh, much more. Yes, reinforcing docks, seawalls, using tougher materials, improving drainage, those are essential first steps.
The basics.
The basics. But the ecological side brings in some really smart nature-based solutions. Think about restoring or even creating wetlands or vegetative buffers along the coast.
Using nature itself.
Precisely. These natural defenses act like sponges, soaking up floodwater, breaking wave energy. It's often more sustainable, sometimes even cheaper, than just hard engineering. Some studies show a single hectare of wetland can absorb millions of gallons of floodwater.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
And this idea of modular adaptive design, that sounds like building for an uncertain future.
It is. Instead of rigid, permanent structures, we need infrastructure that can be adjusted, maybe even moved as climate impacts change or our understanding gets better. Adaptability is key.
Makes sense.
Now, the second pillar, adopting clean and renewable energy, this tackles that carbon footprint we talked about directly.
Right, shifting away from fossil fuels inside the port gates. How's that happening?
It's a few things working together. Bringing solar and wind power right onto the port site, powering buildings, equipment, that's one piece.
Okay.
Another is electrification,
Hmm.
switching as much as possible cargo handlers, vehicles to electric, and providing shore-to-ship power that's often called cold ironing.
Cold ironing.
Yeah, it lets docked ships plug in and turn off their polluting engines. It makes a huge difference for local air quality and greenhouse gases. A single large container ship at berth can emit as much nasty particulate matter as thousands of idling trucks.
Thousands. Wow, that's significant.
It really is. And what's also exciting is the potential for smart microgrids within ports. These localized energy systems can blend renewables, manage energy use super efficiently, and even give ports some energy independence.
Smart microgrids, like a mini energy network for the port itself. Okay, so the third part of this transformation, digitalization and AI. How does tech help make ports climate resilient?
This is where we really leverage data. AI can be huge for developing better early warning systems for storms, giving ports vital time to prepare, to batten down the hatches.
Getting ahead of the storm.
Exactly. And predictive climate modeling helps understand long-term risks like sea level rise impacts to inform planning. These models crunch massive amounts of data, weather patterns, ocean currents.
Hmm.
And then there's the idea of digital twins.
Ah, yes, I've heard of those. Virtual copies.
That's right, virtual replicas of the whole port. You can simulate how different climate scenarios, say, a major storm surge or higher sea levels would affect operations. It lets you spot weaknesses and test solutions virtually, risk-free, like simulating a 1-meter sea level rise on the Keys.
So it's like a virtual stress test.
Mhm.
Very cool. And it's not just physical resilience, right? The sources mention smart logistics cutting emissions too.
Absolutely. Digitalization means smarter logistics. AI can optimize routes for trucks and ships within the port, cutting down congestion, reducing idling time that directly lowers emissions, better cargo tracking, more efficient handling through digital platforms. It all makes for a leaner, greener operation.
It really does all connect. Okay, finally, the last piece of the triple transformation, sustainable governance and human capacity. This sounds like it's about the people and the rules.
Exactly right. None of this tech or infrastructure works without the right people and frameworks. You need port managers and authorities trained in climate strategy, in risk assessment, even in things like the circular economy.
Circular economy, meaning
Meaning minimizing waste, maximizing how long we use resources.
Mhm.
So training and education are vital. And then they're setting up things like climate observatories,
observatories.
platforms bringing together everyone involved, government, private companies, academics, local community groups. They share knowledge, collaborate, and develop solutions that actually fit the local context.
So getting everyone around the table.
Precisely. And that last point about engaging local communities is so important. For these changes to stick, they need to be inclusive. They need local buy-in.
It's clear that building a climate-resilient port isn't just one thing. It's a really comprehensive effort. Now let's shift to that exciting idea, ports not just being resilient, but becoming active green growth engines. How can they drive that wider green agenda?
Well, if you think about their location and existing infrastructure, ports are perfectly positioned to be hubs in the growing green economy.
How so?
Think about green hydrogen. It's seen as a critical clean fuel for the future. Ports could become major export terminals for it.
Okay, exporting clean energy.
Right. Or offshore wind. Those massive farms need ports for construction, for deployment, for ongoing maintenance. They need space. Specialized equipment, ports can provide that.
Logistical hubs for renewables.
Exactly. And as shipping itself switches to cleaner fuels, maybe ammonia or methanol, ports will be essential for storing that fuel, distributing it, bunkering the ships.
So they become the green gas stations of the future, basically.
That's a good way to put it. And this idea, industrial symbiosis, is really interesting too.
Symbiosis, like in biology.
Kind of. Imagine port industries clustered together where one company's waste becomes another's resource, creating closed loops, minimizing waste, maximizing efficiency. Maybe sediment dredged from the port gets used in nearby construction, for example.
Reusing waste streams. Clever.
And ports can also be incubators for climate tech, providing space for startups, helping pilot new sustainable shipping technologies.
So fostering innovation right there at the waterfront. It's a really positive vision, ports actively contributing, not just reacting. Now, the source material specifically mentioned Morocco having a strategic opportunity. What's special about their situation?
Well, Morocco's geography is key. It sits on major global shipping routes, has a long coastline. Plus, they've made big investments in their ports lately. Tanger Med, Casablanca, Layun, Dakhla.
Big projects.
Very big. So that combination location plus modern infrastructure puts them in a great position to become a regional leader in climate-resilient port development.
And it's not just about protecting their own shores, is it?
No, not at all. Morocco has huge potential to integrate renewables. They've got abundant sun and wind right into their port operations. And beyond that, they could really foster South-South collaboration.
Meaning sharing knowledge with other developing nations.
Exactly, sharing their expertise, their best practices on climate adaptation and sustainability with other countries in the global South.
So they could really lead by example and help others along. That brings us to a really insightful point from the sources, this shift in perspective. Comparing the old way of thinking with a new one, can you elaborate?
Yeah, the sources highlight this well. The old question was often, how do we protect ports from climate change? It was defensive, reactive.
Looking inwards.
Right. But the new question, the more powerful one, is how do we empower ports to become champions of climate innovation and resilience? It's a total mindset shift.
From victim to leader.
Precisely. Recognizing their potential to actively drive solutions, not just weather the storm.
That is a powerful reframing. It's about unlocking potential, not just managing risk. And the ultimate impact, as the sources say, goes way beyond the port gates themselves.
Absolutely. When ports are climate resilient, it's not just about keeping goods flowing. It secures global trade, it supports the communities that rely on those ports, and it bolsters the resilience of entire economies facing climate change.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive. Just to quickly recap the key things we've covered. Ports face these major climate threats, rising seas, extreme weather, but they also contribute to the problem via emissions.
The double bind.
Right. And the path forward involves that triple transformation, ecological, technological, and human, to create ports that are both resilient and smart.
Integrating nature, tech, and people.
And maybe the most hopeful part,
Yeah.
this potential for ports to become real catalysts for the green transition hubs, for clean energy, for the circular economy, for innovation like we see potentially happening in Morocco.
Yeah, what's really compelling is thinking of the port not just as infrastructure, but as this dynamic connected system, almost like a living ecosystem, as some of the research put it.
Living ecosystem, I like that.
And that brings us to a final thought for everyone listening. Consider the ripple effects, the cascading effects of a truly climate-resilient port. Think about its impact on the whole global supply chain, on the communities it supports. What new industries, what new collaborations might actually spring up from this transformation?
That's definitely something to chew on long after this deep dive ends.